The world of Percy Jackson is based on Greek mythology, although the author took some creative liberties, especially with the more gory, scandalous, and amorous parts. And Greek mythology has a lot of that, so we will focus on showing the actual myths in the first episode of Disney's new Percy Jackson series. Let's go through this episode chronologically. Let's start at the beginning.
Being a half-blood is dangerous. It's scary. Most of the time, it gets you killed in painful, nasty ways.
Says that half-breeds die in painful and unpleasant ways, and he's not lying. Take Heracles, for example. This guy defeated a bunch of monsters, challenges that seemed impossible to accomplish, only for his wife, a bit jealous, to give him Hydra's acid-covered cape, thinking it was a magic potion. And Heracles ended up in so much pain, he decided to make a bonfire, but with himself on top of it. And then there's Bellerophon, who decided that flying too close to the sun on the back of Pegasus was a good idea. Angry Zeus had Pegasus knock the hero down, causing his death. And let's not forget Orpheus, torn to pieces by an overzealous fan club. Greek mythology is not exactly full of happy endings. Back to the series, when Percy is young, he witnesses some strange images, such as a Pegasus on a rooftop next to his school and what looks like a Colchid bull roaming the streets of the city. Technically, Pegasus is the only flying horse in Greek mythology, so either Percy saw the real Pegasus, or, since the series takes place thousands of years after the Greek myths, Pegasus could easily have made some babies. As for the bull of Colchis, it was one of the creatures featured in the myth of Jason and the Golden Fleece. According to legend, Jason traveled to Colchis, an ancient kingdom located on the eastern coast of the Black Sea, to obtain the Golden Fleece, a magical ram skin that bestowed prosperity on whoever possessed it. The king of Colchis, Eetes, imposed several tests to obtain the fleece, one of which was to plow a field with 2 bronze bulls that spewed fire from their mouths. Jason was assisted by Medea, the daughter of Eetes, who had fallen in love with him, and gave him an ointment that made him invulnerable to fire. Thus, Jason managed to tame the bulls and fulfill the test, although he then had to face other obstacles before getting the fleece and fleeing with Medea. If you want me to make a video about the saga of Jason and the Argonauts, now is the time to smash your keyboard in the comments. In the next scene, we see Percy and his mother contemplating a statue of Perseus with Medusa's head in his hand. But we'll talk more about their encounter in part 2 of this video.
Because when he was a very little boy, he and his mother were placed in a wooden chest and cast out into the sea by a very angry king.
She tells Percy that Perseus and his mother were locked in a chest and thrown into the sea by an angry king. But they don't tell him in the series is why the king was so angry, which is probably a good thing since Percy is still a kid. According to the best-known version, King Acrisius of Argos received an oracle announcing that he would die at the hands of his grandson. The logical answer, obviously, is to build a bronze tower for your daughter, Danae, making her the first princess in a tower long before Disney made it a fad. The goal was simple. No man could get close, so no grandchild could be born. But the king didn't count on the appetite of Zeus, who by making her so inaccessible, went into Barney Stinson mode and said,
"Challenge accepted."
Zeus, who was never one to take no for an answer and always found creative ways around obstacles, fell in love with Danae. He longed to be with his beloved. He decided to show up not on Tinder, but in the form of golden rain. Yes, friends, literally golden rain. No one can deny that Zeus is a romantic. This somehow achieves the impossible. Danae gets pregnant, and thus Perseus is born. When Acrisius finds out, instead of wondering how his master plan for the bronze tower failed, he decides that the best solution is a little open sea. So he stuffs his daughter and grandson into a wooden chest and throws them into the sea. Fortunately for them, Zeus was attentive, for once taking care of the consequences of his amorous adventures, and ensured that the chest reached the island of Seriphos, where they were rescued by the fisherman Dictys. And it is there that Perseus grows up.
And against all odds, he managed to find his way to a happy ending.
Percy's mother tells him that she named him Perseus because he is one of the few heroes with a happy ending. And well, it depends on who you ask. In the most popular version of the myth, he founds a city and becomes king. But if you read Ovid, you'll find that Perseus not only becomes king, but also has a Game of Thrones ending. Perseus kills his great-uncle and then is killed in revenge by his great-uncle's son. A good drama.
It was only a matter of time before we found you.
When Percy and his class are on a field trip to the museum, he is confronted by his algebra teacher, Mrs. Dodds, which is revealed to be a Fury, also known as Erinyes, basically the enforcers of the rules in ancient Greece. They specialized in pursuing those who broke family oaths or committed crimes. They chased the guilty across the world and through the underworld, causing them madness, sickness, and suffering. Although in the Percy Jackson stories, the Furies seem to have an exclusive contract with Hades, in the good old days, any mortal could get their attention. It was almost impossible to escape his wrath. You could pray, you could sacrifice your lunch, you could cry, but they were still there, unwavering in their purpose. And if you thought that by dying you were free, well, you were not. A VIP cell awaited you in the dungeon of the damned of the underworld, where they continued the torture party forever. The only way out was almost as complicated as the problem. A purification ritual, or if you were lucky, a series of services to the community in the style of Heracles and his 12 labors. Before I continue, you may have already noticed that this video is different from the ones I usually upload. I have seen interesting to start this new series in which I will talk about mythology in movies and series. I hope you are liking it. If so, let me know in the comments. That will encourage me to prepare more videos like this one.
You fell in love with God? Like Jesus?
Now, let's move forward a little. Percy has been expelled from school, and now he's with his mother, who has just told him that his father is a god, which makes him a demigod. When at that moment Grover shows up at his cabin with his goat legs in full view, it turns out that Grover is a satyr, a creature little respected in mythology, and for a good reason. In mythology, satyrs are drunken, sex-obsessed party animals, beings who accompany the god Dionysus, the god of wine and feasting, which is why they are depicted with goblets or musical instruments in hand. And as lovers of pleasure, they are often shown with nymphs, spirits of nature. Before Grover, Percy, and Sally Jackson can reach the camp, they are ambushed by the Minotaur. The Minotaur is a unique being, and I don't think Disney will ever explain the story of its creation. In Greek mythology, there are stories that are total madness, and the Minotaur's story is quite strong. And since Disney didn't tell you about it, I'll give you a little summary. The story of the Minotaur is a mythological soap opera. It all begins with King Minos, who wanted to make sure that everyone in Crete recognized him as the supreme leader. To do so, he asked Poseidon for a little favor. Could you make me go viral among my people? Poseidon, who is a real influencer on Olympus, says, sure, but in exchange, sacrifice me that spectacular white bull I'm going to pull out of the sea. Minos agrees, but when he sees the bull, he thinks this being is too beautiful and unique to sacrifice, and decides to make a change, hoping that Poseidon would not notice. Poor guy. To get revenge, Poseidon makes Pasiphae, Minos' wife, fall madly in love with the bull. Here begins the shady part. Daedalus, the Tony Stark of antiquity, build a wooden cow so that Pasiphae can consummate her love. From this peculiar union is born the Minotaur, half man, half bull, and totally hungry for human flesh. Minos decides that the best way to deal with this little family problem is to lock the Minotaur in a labyrinth so complicated that not even Google Maps could find the exit. The labyrinth, Daedalus's masterpiece, becomes the home of the Minotaur. If you want to see the story in depth, I leave you the video we made about the confrontation of the Minotaur and Theseus. Subscribe to not miss the analysis of the next episode.